What is going on, church family? It's Pastor Jay here for your Wednesday, April 29th edition of 6 at 6, and I'm here to report, yes, it's true. We have already hit 100 degrees in Phoenix. Terrible, terrible news. I wanted to thank everybody who's come out over the last couple days to go down to Phoenix Rescue Mission. It has blessed me so much to know that our church body has continued to keep the heart of service forefront throughout this entire epidemic. If you haven't signed up, maybe go online now, see if there's a couple spots left. We want to get people down there supporting, activating their faith in that way. You have no idea who God has got in store for you as you are boxing up different food items. You have no idea what the Lord can do through that. So I wanted to thank you, though, for being a part of it and being faithful to that call of service. As you know, we're in this new 6 at 6 series for the next few weeks about the concept of, is it living? And it's a real question that you're supposed to take and apply to yourself, your own spiritual life and your heart, to really see if you are living as you should be internally before God. And as Chris has talked about, we've gone through, we know the different elements of this that we talked about on Monday, but we've been focusing yesterday and today on the idea of movement. Yesterday, I talked about how the first step in movement is being drawn to something, being focused and being driven towards something. But today I wanted to talk about one of the hindrances, and I actually brought Kim with me today to really explain a little bit about some of the hindrances to movement. And we've come up with this concept of lukewarmness. Immediately, as soon as you hear that, if you've been a Christian for a while, your mind goes to Revelation, where it talks about Jesus spitting out one that is lukewarm, that is neither hot nor cold. But I want you to consider it from this way. In the natural world, maybe many of you have ever been going up the I-17 towards Flagstaff and stopped off at the amazing animal sanctuary called Out of Africa. I've been going to that since I've been 8 years old. It was up in Fountain Hills. One of the interesting things that is talked about when you go to Out of Africa, when the guide is talking to you, they're talking about the duration that an animal can actually stay encaged or in captivity. See, the problem that happens for an animal that's been in captivity is you no longer, after it gets past this friction point, can actually put it back into the wild. What's the cause of that? The cause of that is because there's been a domestication. There's been a complacency that's grown where that animal no longer knows how to hunt, no longer knows how to fend for itself. All of its needs have been taken care of. And so I wanted to bring Kim in here for a second because I think that actually applies to the concept of movement. One of the things that we must be doing if we're living is moving. But we can grow complacent, we can grow lukewarm if we're not actually cognizant of what we're doing, right, Kim?
Exactly. So with lukewarmness, it's like you have a mild or like a moderate heart towards God, right?
Right.
It's like at the beginning of the year, you have all these plans and all these ideas on how to better yourself for like the year. And so you start going to the gym in January, and then you slowly start like just
drifting
not going.
away.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you asked me to study the concept of lukewarmness, I was like, I was reading two biblical characters in the Bible, very important characters, and I saw that lukewarmness happens to everybody. So no matter where you are in your walk with God, if you're
it's a definite threat.
Yeah, if you're a short-term believer, if you've been a believer for such a long time, and I also learned that with lukewarmness, it's not one big sin or one big fall that causes you to be lukewarm. It's actually it leads you. It's little decisions that you make every day that causes you to become lukewarm.
Become complacent. It's almost like an elongated choice over a large choice over many little ones.
Yeah, and so I was reading, I found this verse in Hebrews chapter 3. You must warn each other every day while it is still today, so that none of you will be deceived by sin and hardened against God. For if we are faithful to the end, trusting God just as firmly as when we first believed, we will share in all that belongs to Christ. So what decisions am I making today that bring me more, passion towards God and builds the fire that I have towards God, right?
Sure. What I love about that is that there was this concept of we have to take the responsibility on ourselves to warn one another when we actually see us drifting away. I know that you had mentioned that you wanted to talk about Moses and David with this.
Yeah, because Moses and David are two just perfect perfect examples of just, they're huge biblical characters, right? With David, we knew he was a man after God's own heart.
Yeah.
We knew how passionate he was for God, but he still had this huge sin that everybody knows about with Bathsheba.
Right.
With Moses, when he was first starting off as Moses, like before he's still living in Egypt. I mean, he was very lukewarm in deciding where he fit. Yeah, exactly. He knew he was a Hebrew, but he was complacent with being just in Egypt and not having to deal with the lives that Hebrews had at that time.
Well, and I think with this, Kim, like one of the things that we have to recognize is that sometimes our surroundings become so repetitive and so familiar to us that we can grow lukewarm. And even if in our church setting, like every single week when we come there, we have worship, we have a greeting time, we have a sermon, and if that becomes the fulcrum of our spiritual life, it's easy to be adjusted and to no longer move. We just find ourselves in the middle, right?
Yeah. And so like when I was reading the life of David before Bathsheba, like that chapter in 2 Samuel chapter 11, I believe. Yeah. You read it and you see like the steps that David took to have that big fall.
Exactly.
Lukewarmness led him to sin, which led him to just be separated from God.
Totally.
It just caused guilt and condemnation, right? And that's what lukewarmness does, and that's why we have to be careful with being lukewarm.
I think that's the thing that we have to understand, is that lukewarmness always brings negative consequences.
Yeah, that's
it. Never brings something where we're actually proud of, or where we're standing there saying, man, I'm grateful that I was in the middle. And this is the reason why it is important for you and I think Kim, you did a great job of it's important for us to stay vigilant. And it's important, I believe, even more so, for us to warn one another when we aren't. Well, listen, guys, I hope this makes sense, and I hope this illustration of these characters and you can really take a look and a deep look and go, okay, that's where I need to work on when it comes to movement and when it comes to lukewarmness. We love you. We're so grateful that you're tuning in every day. Share this if it makes sense to you, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.